Nico for that report here in New York City. So as former President Donald Trump begins to assemble his team, President Biden addressed the nation for the first time after President-elect Trump's victory, and he promises a peaceful transfer of power come Inauguration Day on January 20th. Take a listen.
Yesterday, I spoke with President-elect Trump to congratulate him on his victory, and I assured him that I'd direct my entire administration to work with his team to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition.
So for more, let's welcome in two Republican strategists, John Elliott and Bobby Eberle, and former Trump campaign aide Rick Gates. Great to have you all on this morning. Rick, I'll start with you. So you were part of the Trump campaign back in 2016. Did his victory this year, 2 nights ago, have the same feeling as 8 years ago when everyone counted him out then against Hillary Clinton? Again, the polls were counting him out this time against Kamala?
Yeah, I think it was a little different. Back in 2016, nobody expected him to win. It was, kind of a surprise victory. We were down so far in the exit polls. He wasn't in nearly the standing he was in 2024. And this time around, people knew Donald Trump. They knew what he was capable of doing and that he would deliver on his agenda. So I think it was, and obviously we didn't win the popular vote in 2016 and we did in 2024. So I think it's a completely different type of victory, a victory that shows that Donald Trump and the Republican Party have made significant gains in terms of how to outreach to voters, finding a message that resonates. Obviously, you have a dynamic candidate. So it was a resounding victory this time around. It was a surprise victory in 2016.
Yeah, you talk about the outreach of voters, and we look at the numbers and look at the demographics and those who ultimately voted for Donald Trump. And we're seeing things that we've never seen before with the amount of black people that voted for Donald Trump, the amount of Latinos that voted for Donald Trump this year. And of course, the Democrats are still trying to point blame. They can't figure out how Kamala lost. John, the blame game for Democrats, it's begun. And right now, the finger pointing seems to be at Joe Biden. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre defending Biden's decision to drop out of the race when he did. Take a look.
Does the president feel any responsibility for the outcome?
The president understands that he's going to respect the will of the people. That's what he understands.
Does the president have any regrets about when he chose to leave the race, or any regrets about deciding to run for a second term?
Look, the president is very proud of what he was able to accomplish. He was very proud, and when he made that decision to hand over the torch, pass the torch to the vice president, he believed it was the right decision to make at that time.
I'm sure she is ready for the day that she does not have to answer those type of questions anymore. John, what do you make of that?
Yeah, Charlotte, she's counting down the days until January 20th, no question about it. I mean, that pause was probably longer than we've ever seen in that briefing room. Bottom line, Charlotte, is that, look, it was the policies that sank the campaign. It doesn't matter who was at the top. But if you look at President Biden, when he was in the Rose Garden yesterday, he was talking about democracy endures, democracy, we need to respect it going forward. He was thrown off totally in an undemocratic way by the grandees, the big poobahs of the party. You had Nancy Pelosi, you had Barack Obama that were basically just threw him off the bus there. And so now you have people who are blaming him for basically saying he chose to step aside, and did he choose at the wrong time to step aside? He didn't choose anything. I mean, he was the only thing that he did was he chose to run as somebody who was a feeble old man back in 2019, 2020. And it was the Democrat Party that took him over Bernie Sanders. And that was something that enabled them to get a very liberal policies through. And that's what sank Kamala Harris. It didn't matter who was on the ticket.
Yeah, you make such a great point. It's the policies that sank Kamala Harris. People didn't want to vote for the things that she stood for. And now the Democrat Party, again, trying to point fingers at Joe Biden. They need to look within themselves and how they lost all of those key demographics. David Axelrod speaking about that just yesterday and pointing out the real problems here. Take a look.
I do have concerns about the way the Democratic Party relates to working class voters in this country. The only group that Democrats gained with in the election on Tuesday was white college graduates, and among working class voters there was a significant decline. The only group they Democrats won among were people who make more than $100,000 a year. You can't win national elections that way, and it certainly shouldn't be that way for a party that fashions itself as the party of working people.
Yeah, Bobby, there was a major shift. Now it's the Republican Party that's the party for the working class. You saw all of the unions come out. You saw all of those working class people come out ahead of the election backing Donald Trump. What has happened within the Democrat Party?
Well, it's great to see, as the son of a Chicago steel worker, I always thought that this was the true Republican Party, representing the working class, looking for ways to grow an economy where the economy is growing, the middle class thrives. And you don't need to look at certain interest groups or anything like that, these particular factions that the Democrats build their party around. And, this was, David Axelrod really hit it. This wasn't a failure of necessarily Biden or Harris, but the party in general that can't relate to the American people and, in fact, talks down to the American people. How dare you vote for Donald Trump? You guys are garbage. You're fascists. You're racist. You're white supremacists. People had enough of that. And I mean, that was our theme in our county, is had enough, vote Republican. And you saw these people, the Teamsters, these other unions, really rallying around Trump. And to have your only gain on white college graduates when you claim to represent minorities and claim to represent women is a really strong indictment of the party.
Yeah, and the fact that Donald Trump got more than 40% of the Latino vote, it really is incredible, flipping specific counties in Texas from blue to red for the first time in more than 100 years. So as we know, the ladies of The View, they're having a very tough time this week with all of this. And they were, again, trying to rationalize what happened. They're trying to understand what happened. Take a listen to this.
We talk a lot about these different demographics and these assumptions of where they're going to go. Latinos in Texas, a district that's 97% Latino, went 75 percentage points for Donald Trump. Why?
Misogyny.
It's on the border.
It's
the border
misogyny.
crisis is on their doorstep. And they were begging people to care about it for years. We need to take some lessons.
That's what that was.
No, it's not misogyny. It's the fact that they live there on the border in Texas, and they're seeing what Kamala's border policies have done to them and their livelihoods. Rick, what do you make of this? This argument, it just won't stop from the left.
No, and it's one example of several. It's we were talking about it yesterday with some Democratic colleagues, and it's almost like they drank their own Kool-Aid too much, and they actually started believing this and didn't recognize what the actual American people felt, what they thought, what the issues of importance to them were. And if the Democrats continue down this road, they're going to continue to lose races. And I think that's why you're seeing such a visceral reaction among Democrats attacking each other and trying to, associate blame. But what's important to recognize is that these cuts are deep for the Democratic Party. This is not something that they can just, pick one, person to kind of lead the party and that's going to fix everything. I think the reason the Democrats are so saddened and heartbroken is because they realize their entire party, the entire apparatus and what it stands for, the issues they focused on, has absolutely just got resoundingly defeated, and they don't know what to do now.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you all about this. Of course, Donald Trump appointing Susie Wild as the new chief of staff. Bobby, I'll get your take first. What do you make of this move?
Well, I guess I'm shocked, right? Because Trump doesn't support strong, intelligent women. And all of a sudden he does this. So maybe, he's off his rocker or something. But, that's the argument, the closing argument that Democrats tried to make, is that Trump's not only this white supremacist evil guy, but he hates women. And the pick is outstanding, from coming up in Florida, earning her, her chops in campaigns, Senate races, presidential races. She's a tremendous pick, one that'll be no nonsense and run the show at the White House, which is exactly what you want. Someone who doesn't look for the limelight, the spotlight, or to make any kind of news headlines, but just run the show and execute her boss's agenda. And she's going to be outstanding.
Yeah, and that's what we're hearing from everyone this morning. John, just want to get a final thought from you on Susie Wiles.
Well, I know Susie Wiles well. We worked together with Rick Gates as well. He knows her. And we worked on the 2016 campaign together. She ran Florida for the president back then. That was the state that threw him over the top in 2016, and she managed his race there, came back and obviously in 2024 and ran the whole thing. Bottom line is she's the best that he could ever have in that White House. And he doesn't care whether she's a woman or man. He wants the best in there, and that's Susie Wiles.
All right, good stuff. Thank you all so much for joining me this morning. Really appreciate it.
Good to see you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
You too. Well, up next, Alex